Everybody. My name is Scott. I'm a medium and a psychic, and I am your host on this Devil's Night, the night before Halloween. When in New Jersey, if you're not careful, your house will be loaded with toilet paper. And yes, in this time of post pandemic, it's a possibility again because I can afford toilet paper and I don't like all of my neighbors. Welcome
We're
in.
back, every
This this is Hushed Up History. This is our live show prior to Halloween. It's Mischief Night. Sarah's here in New Jersey as well. She is our Hushed Up historian, and she's going to tell us some really spooky tales this evening. So as you come in, let us know where you're from and what do they call Mischief Night where you're from? Let us know in the
Yeah,
comments.
'cause from what I
Sarah, how are you?
understand, Mischief Night is a Jersey thing.
Yeah, so there's other places where they call it Cabbage Night, and they call it Devil's Night, and there's a
Yeah.
couple other things in the world that they call the night before Halloween. And I wonder, do you know where I know we didn't prepare this part, but do you know where the idea of Mischief Night came from?
I do not.
You don't, huh?
I
So
don't.
I also don't, but I assume that it was adolescents, kids that are about 17, 18, 19 years old who were no longer allowed to go trick or treating because they got too old. And the night before, they just decided it's time to drink
I think
Budweisers and rage. At least that's what I imagine Glenn Danzig did in 1981 during the height of so much craziness here in New Jersey. It's
throwing out
Devil's
the
Night in
dancing name.
Michigan.
Wow.
Hi, Terry from British Columbia. How are you? What do
Now,
they
I
call
don't
the
know
night
the
before
origin of
Halloween?
Mischief Night, but are you aware of the Ragamuffins after Halloween?
It sounds like something that I might want to avoid. No, I don't know what that is.
It's a tale for another time. I'm gonna post about it.
Okay, ragamuffins, everybody. So Silvery K says Mischief Night originated in England, possibly as early as the 18th century. A night of pranks associated with May Day or
No,
Fawkes
our
Day.
Guy Fawkes
It was
Night.
brought
Okay.
to Yep, it was brought to North America by settlers. Oh, that's cool. Who knew? That's pretty great. So everybody say hi to Miss K down in the comments. She is always helping us out and bringing us interesting tidbits and facts. So Sarah has prepared some very interesting tales. So whether you're watching this on Mischief Night, Halloween, or anytime, make sure that you subscribe to Hushed Up History here on our YouTube and also Signal Network here on our channel, because she's always going to be dropping new stuff for us to listen to, and I'm really excited. Supernatural, Untold Stories in the house. That's Chris Mendes, who we got to
Yay,
spend
supernatural untold
last
stories.
weekend with, and he's going to bring us some new investigations this coming month. So I'm sorry, in
Woo.
December. So yeah, we're really excited. Chris has a lot of really great things to bring for us. So Sarah, without further ado, why don't you introduce our first tale of mystery and intrigue and possibly ghosts?
Sure. So, hey everybody, Sarah from Hushed Up History. And if you've been following what I do on my blog or socials or whatever, you'll see that I post these very long, elaborate, sometimes elaborate stories. But not all the crazy stories are long. There's some insane stories buried in little tiny snippets in newspapers. So that's what we're going to look at tonight. And our first story of the night comes from Martinez, California. It was printed in the Long Beach Telegram on March 4th, 1920, and it's entitled Constant Use of Ouija Board Drives Seven People Insane.
Seven
Now,
people in particular.
seven people in particular. So, what happened here was there was a 15-year-old girl, and she somehow convinced six people, including her mother, that they were being attacked by spirits and they had to do something to figure it out and get the spirits to go away. And some of the things they all gathered in a house, and some of the things that they decided they had to do to remove the spirits were have multiple 24-hour long seances. They
Oh,
decided they had to burn $700 to pay the spirits to go away. And then it kind of took a little bit of a weird turn. They started telling the children of the neighborhood to come into the house with them, and they would shave their heads to give the spirits their hair to make them go away. And the only reason this stopped was because the neighbors went to the police and were like, "Hey, that house is taking our kids and they're not letting them
okay.
out." So when the police broke into the house, they found this collection of 7 people, the daughter, the mom, and other people, one of which started screaming how the spirit of her husband was there and he was going to get them if they came in. And they just kind of broke it up and everybody went on their merry way. They found 4 Ouija boards in the house. And that is the story of 7 people being driven insane by Ouija boards in Martinez, California in 1920.
Holy cow. So
Right?
1920 is during the would you say it's the beginning or the height of spiritualism?
Oh, it's a weird time,
Right.
1920. But it was definitely something that was still around, something that was definitely talked about. So Ouija boards and this idea of connecting with the dead wasn't necessarily the strangest part, if you can imagine that.
Yeah.
But this notion of, hey, these 7 people, the spirits, they're attacking you, and we got to do something about it, like burn money and shave people's heads and have multiple 24-hour long seances. That's the cure. We're gonna fix it.
So do you want to play Ouija board with me?
Listen, I don't have a problem with Ouija boards at all, and I know, like, if you wanna talk about a spooky item that people have opinions of, it's a Ouija board.
This right
I've
here.
had yeah, especially that one. But I mean, I've had at least 1 Ouija board in my house since I was, like, 8 years old. I got one as a Christmas gift. I think right now I have 4 in the house.
Wow.
I don't have a problem with them,
I have four
but
right
I
to the left of me.
right next to you. There you go,
And
see?
I have a giant one. You wanna see my big Ouija board? I don't think
Yes.
people get to see this, but it's right here, it's cool. Here we go. Look at this. It's
That's
huge,
a fancy, fancy board.
and it's gotta weigh at least 10 pounds. It's look how thick it is.
I mean,
So a friend of mine, is a carpenter, and he took apart, like, a shed or an old barn or something, and he was like, "What should I do with this wood?" And I was like, "Can you make me a Ouija board out of it, like a
make a
custom
Ouija
one?"
board,
And
obviously.
he's 6'5", so this was a good size for him. But, for me,
He's
it's more
like, "It's
like
a
a
pocket
table.
one, right?"
Yeah, it's a pocket one.
Correct.
So then I gave it to my buddy Brian McCauley, who's a huge Ghostbusters fan and a paranormal investigator, and he painted this for me. So it's got a lot of really cool
That's
stuff
awesome.
on it. Yeah, it's pretty
That's
neat,
really
right?
cool.
Here's the truth too. I've never even used it yet. So one of these days we might have to come live and try them. Down in the chat, if
Yeah.
you guys are interested in me using a Ouija board live here on YouTube, let me know down in the comments because I'll play for you. So in all of the strangeness, I think that one of the things that we should talk about is the fact that, like, I wonder what gave this person the idea that they should say, like, the ghost said to cut everybody's hair. That's such a
Yeah. Well, that's
strange
that's
thing.
the thing with some of these, like, little tidbits of weird stories is there's very little context. So you'll read this headline of just, "Oh, 7 people went nuts from a Ouija board," and then that's it.
So Sarah,
So,
that article that you showed us,
yeah.
so when we're done here, Sarah's gonna post that up onto her Instagram at Hushed Up History so that you can take a look at that yourself and you can see where the source material comes from. So everybody
Absolutely.
follow at Hushed Up History on Instagram. Okay. So that I wonder what's the weirdest thing I've ever heard of, like, things with Ouija boards. Of course, there was a movie called Ouija where, like, you look through the I usually have one laying
Yeah.
around here, but I don't have it in front of me today. Where you look through the planchette and you can see ghosts,
Mhm.
but that's not true. And what do you think about this? So Sarah and chat, let me know. Like, do you think it's bad luck to not say goodbye at the end of a Ouija board session?
Well, I
No, you
don't.
don't think?
I
Okay.
know there's the whole, like, way to close it out and everything. I don't necessarily think that's needed. It's probably nice, but
Yeah, I always say
I don't
goodbye
think
on
the
my Ouija
ghosts are
boards.
waiting, like, "They didn't say bye," and, like, to jump out. Like,
Yeah, I'm not sure where the idea came from. So if it was never printed on a William Fold talking board at the bottom, nobody would have ever come up with that idea, I bet. So they were just like, what else can we put on here to fill out the graphic? And they were like, let's put goodbye at the bottom.
goodbye.
That seems nice. Let's be nice to the
Yeah,
ghosts.
be considerate.
And maybe by not saying goodbye, they attracted all of these spirits that said burn money and cut hair. So those seem very like
Solved it.
I'm not gonna put any business out there, but you understand things of, can I say witchcraft? I don't know if that's the right word. You understand these things. Do you think that there is a reason, like a ritual behind like burning money? Is there anything you've ever heard of like burn money and it will do this for you?
I mean, it's hard to say because people who practice those types of things, it's like there's either these very strict rules of these like certain paths that people follow, or a lot of the reason that people like to follow these types of paths and these belief system is because they're so customizable. So
Right.
it's entirely possible that there are people all over who that is part of something they do.
Right. Okay. So the reason I was asking is like I've heard of hauntings where people have interacted with spirits in the house without Ouija boards, and they've said like, "Hey, we found that doing X, Y, and Z kind of calms them down." Like if we don't
Mm,
go in Sarah's room, they don't throw the plates in the kitchen, so we just don't go in Sarah's room. It's stuff like that. It
yeah.
it makes me wonder about the intentions of spirits or the alleged intentions and where do the people come up with these ideas. So was it really ghosts telling them through a Ouija board, or were these people just suffering from psychosis?
And especially in 1920. It's not like
Yeah,
there was social media around or television shows to influence these types of things. So,
yeah. And
yeah,
they weren't doing it for clout.
no.
It definitely would have been looked down upon, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Um, As everybody's coming in, please do us a favor. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the share button. Put it on your Facebook feed for us. Put it out into Instagram. If you're watching this on the replay, say Team Replay down below. And also let us know what they call Mischief Night where you are. That's the night before Halloween. And that's what we call it here in New Jersey. Again, let me introduce this is Sarah from Hushed Up History. She is our local Hushed Up historian, and she comes here with us every week and gives us new tales of head scratchers, ghosts, and sometimes aliens. So far, we had, I
Sometimes.
think,
Yeah.
some interesting alien stories. So let's move into the next story. What do you got for us?
Okay, so the next story is from Washington D.C. Let's get that out.
Okay.
And it was from March 20th, 1922. And at the time, there was a haunting that was going on in Nova Scotia that was getting a lot of press. And this man decided that he was going to speak to his local paper and kind of give his opinion on how they were speaking about the spirits because he met 20 ghosts and he liked all of them except for one.
Oh,
So he told
what did he do for
all
a
of them.
living?
I believe he was a doctor. No,
19?
no, that's wrong. He was not a doctor. I'm not sure offhand.
Okay.
I'm thinking of
I
something
was gonna
else.
make a joke. I was hoping he was a dentist so I could say that, he
Oh, no.
recommended talking to 19 out of 20 ghosts.
There we go. Yeah, no, he definitely wasn't a dentist, but he gave his opinion because he was an expert. He had been a paranormal investigator in the Washington D.C. area for 5 years, and he was like, "Listen, I've met 20 ghosts, and they were all great except for one. So I don't know what these people in Nova Scotia are talking about." And some of the things that he decided to share about his ghosty buddies that he learned was that we hear today how like cold spots mean ghosts. Well, he said that if you're touched by a ghost, they're actually very warm to the touch. He also said that a ghost friend of his brought him some apples at one point, and that's when he learned that ghost apples don't have any flavor to them. The more you know. Star
Okay.
above.
Yeah.
Ghost apples, no flavor. Um, he also said that they normally arrive around midnight, but they sometimes will show up for him around 8 p.m. And there was one ghost in particular that was just very upset about his visit to the Florida coast and let him know that he was not going to return there next year. Just putting that
Okay.
out there.
Yelp
Yeah.
review.
Yeah. In 1922 for ghosts. But the
So
one that he didn't
our
like,
guy
but the
what's that?
one that he didn't like, he made
Okay.
it very clear to this newspaper that you should just be nice to the ghosts. Don't tell them they can't come around because then they get upset. And that was one that got very upset with him because he pulled the blankets over his head at one point and he ignored him. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder what happened.
He apparently just got mad, and left.
Said goodbye, sir. I'm a
Goodbye,
ghost. I
sir.
do not have to take this, and
I
I'm going
do
to go
not have
write
to
a
take
rotten
this.
Yelp review in a Victoria
About
newspaper.
you.
Goodbye. About you. You're so hostile down here in Florida.
I came to you to talk to you from beyond, and you put a blanket over your head. Good day, sir.
Now,
Good day.
on a more serious note, I have
Yes.
to agree with him on something that I find when I'm in spirit communication that I actually get very warm. It's
Mm.
quite the opposite. When people talk about cold spots, I do assume that they're just talking about a drafty window or a cold room because
Mhm.
it's been very rare that I felt cold when I actually had the true presence of like a spirit or a ghost around me.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
100%.
So
Mhm.
so perhaps our man was a medium and he didn't realize that that's what he was doing because there was not a
Mhm.
ton of research that somebody could do about that sort of thing at the time, right? And I
Mhm.
think it's interesting that he was like, invite them around. It's okay. Don't tell them they can't come because they get
Yeah.
upset. And the one that I told to kick rocks wrote this really rotten Yelp review, and it's really hurting the coast of Florida. Disney's never going to come here.
Never coming back.
They're never coming back. So, um, how do you like feel about that? Have you had any like positive or negative experiences with spirits or ghosts before?
I mean, I've had a lot of experiences. I can't really say I've had one that's been negative. I've never, like, been scratched. I've never had anything thrown across the room at me, anything like that. So I've had a lot of interactions, I've seen a lot, I've experienced a lot, but none of it, in my opinion, has been anything super negative towards me specifically or harmful towards me. There was one day where I was working at my local museum where I work, and the way the building is set up, it used to be an old church. It was built in 1825, I believe. So the top floor is like a U shape, and you can look over into the bottom floor. And there was a day where I did see the cover of the thermostat fling off, off the thermostat and across the room. And I don't know what this says about me, but my only reaction to that was like, don't do
Don't
that.
do that.
Don't
You
break stuff.
fresh
I'm
ghost.
not filling out that paperwork for you
You're
breaking
like,
stuff while I'm at work. Knock it
Marjorie
off.
keeps it at 68 degrees. I'm sorry, ghost. Please don't mess with the thermostat.
Sorry.
It was a dad. He was mad that somebody turned it up to 70, and he was like, "Put it back down to 68.
Step back down.
67 better. And put on socks and a sweatshirt." He's like, "Ghosts are cold. I'll prove it to you."
See the guy. See guy from
Yep,
19. See, same thing. Ghosts
yep.
aren't
He was
cold.
like, "Yep."
But I mean, that was probably the most like aggressive thing that I've personally been there for. I know other people that have been pushed, that have been shoved. That's never happened to me. So
Yeah, I tell the story all the time of getting lifted up by my belt in Penhurst. That was
Penhurst.
a no joke thing that actually happened. It wasn't funny. I was
Well,
really actually
in the
pretty terrified.
comments down there, terminal sunburn. He had a quite an experience in Penhurst as well.
Did he? Perhaps we'll have to have him come on and talk to us about it if he's
Oh, there we
up
go.
for it. Hey, what's up, Afraid of Nothing podcast? Nice to see you there. That's Robert Heskey, and he's in Haunted, Massachusetts. Which,
Hey, Robert.
man, Sarah and I just had a conversation about that, and hopefully, sometime in the next couple months, we'll be able to talk about it. But very cool stuff coming out of there. So, when it comes to ghosts, I think I don't know that that was a negative experience I had. I was scared because thin air shouldn't be able to lift up a man that weighs almost 300 pounds. Um, but I've never really had a super negative experience with a ghost where I was like, "Oh, this is really like." No, that's not true. When I was a kid, I had some pretty terrifying things, but I think it's just because
Okay,
I was a kid and didn't understand what was happening. But as an
gotcha.
adult, it's all been pretty peachy. As long as you treat them kindly, they're pretty nice. Um, I just like the fact that they like gave a bad ghost Yelp review. I mean, I'm not, and ghost apples. Let's
I
dig
like
into
the
this one
ghost
for a second.
apples. It's like,
Let's
"Have
dig
some
into this one.
apples," and it's like, "Oh, thank you." Mm.
Um, because first off, Terminal says ghost apples generate heat, and that's a fact. I'm gonna have to take your word for it. I've never had a ghost apple,
Mhm.
but I know, I know that they possibly could generate heat. We have Rick down below. What's up, Rick? Thanks for being our number two today. In
Hey, Rick.
July, An in-law of mine passed. I was wondering about fixing some steps in his home when I passed by his chair. The temperature dropped to 32 degrees. It felt like goosebumps and all. Okay, so here's what I say is I'm not going to take away from your personal experience. And there is a good chance that perhaps that was your in-law and he was just letting you know, like, hey, don't touch my chair, or maybe he was trying to call attention to the chair. So I would definitely say that my idea is mine and my experience is my own. And we can all experience it differently. I've just given my opinion. So perhaps that was your in-law coming to say hello. So Sarah,
Yes.
what's your favorite Halloween candy?
I'm not gonna say this is my favorite, but it's definitely one that people feel very strongly about. I really like candy corn.
Yo,
Sorry.
I love candy corn.
S
November 1st, I go into the food store and I buy it at 70% off.
Candy
My
corn is
dentist loves
delicious.
it because I come in and all my
Delicious.
teeth are just falling out. And I'm just like, "I had you on candy
Delicious,
corn."
waxy goodness. I love it. I
Waxy
love candy
goodness.
corn.
People listen, down in the comments, whether you're team replay or watching live, let us know. Yes or no? Do you like candy corn? Tell us. My personal favorite Halloween candy, switches as I'm getting older. As a kid, it was Butterfinger, then it went to
Ooh,
Snickers, and now it's not chocolate anymore. I love Smarties. Gi
Smarties.
Give me a roll of Smarties and Sweet
Okay.
Tarts. Smarties and Sweet Tarts. You
Sweet
hook
tarts
me
are
up with
pretty good.
those 2 things, I won't
Oh,
leave I'll leave you alone.
I'm a chocolate I love chocolate, and, like, chocolate and peanut butter? Yeah, but
Yeah,
I
chocolate
do
and
love
peanut butter.
candy corn,
I
so
feel like Reese's is pretty delicious, but I think I'm just, like, getting old, and it's just not my flavor no more. I just really like
not
Smarties.
feeling it.
Jeff says, "My nose senses are going off." You're a psychic nose senses? Be careful. None of this is BS, this is all true. I do love Smarties.
I do
The
love candy corn.
Marathon bar. I don't know if I know what's a Marathon bar? Does anybody know? Do you know? It sounds like it's for skinny people, that's not for me. Alright. Welcome, everybody. My name is Scott. I am your host this evening. This is Sarah from Hushed Up History. This is actually her show. I'm just a sidekick today. She's telling us some strange and odd stories. That you've already heard a story about a Ouija board that told people to burn money and cut their hair, and then you heard about a man who thought that ghosts were cold. He loved ghost apples, and 19 out of 20 ghosts that visited him were very nice. Interesting.
Yeah.
Hushed up. All right. What do we got next, Miss Sarah?
Next is this is a fun one. I think it's a fun one. So, there was a man named Lieutenant Leonard Spaulding who was from Vermont. He was one of the original founders of one of these small towns in Vermont, and over time, he moved to a town called Dummerston. And he was very successful in this town of Dummerston. He was the first to represent Dummerston in the Vermont state legislature. He was very, very active in his community. He was an upstanding guy, and everybody very well, he was very highly respected. His whole family. Then, in May of 1782, his family started dying. His children, one after another, started dying. They all started to get afflicted by this disease, and they would wither away. They would drop weight dramatically. They were hacking up blood. They lost all of their strength. It just that they were just drained of their life, and then they died. Multiple children died, very, very quick succession. And every time that they would bring his children to the family burial plot, they started to notice something. They started to notice that there was a vine, a very thick, gnarled vine that started at the first burial. Then they would go to perform the second burial and they noticed that vine had grown. Then they went to bury the third and they noticed the vine had grown and that the vine was going from coffin to coffin of all of the children of the Spaulding family. Then he passed away of the same disease. Same thing. They dug up the grave. They noticed that this vine was going from coffin to coffin to coffin. So, being that day and age, they did not have this understanding of disease. They didn't understand that what was killing the Spaulding family was tuberculosis. What they believed at the time was that the undead were coming up and taking the life force from people. And that's why so many people were suffering from this disease. And what happened was New England went into multiple vampire panics where they believed that the undead were coming up, afflicting family members, and they were all dying of tuberculosis. But we didn't know it was tuberculosis. So it was one of the many New England vampire epidemics. But this had something new. This had the vine that they was going from coffin to coffin to coffin. So they believed that this vine was a sort of vampire vine that was cursing the members of the family, that each time it reached a coffin, another member of the Spalding family would die. 6 people ended up dying. And when they finally dug this last burial for Josiah, who was only 27 years old, they decided this was it. We're putting an end to this. So, being that New England has had many of these vampire outbreaks, when you have these things, they had very specific methods to end the vampire curses. They started coming up with procedure. And one of these procedures, they decided it was time for Josiah to become subject to one of these procedures. They removed his heart, his liver, and his lungs, and they burned them. This was standard procedure for removing vampire curses from families in New England. But we now had a vine. So after they did this procedure to Josiah Spalding, they had to take care of the vine. They cut the vine into pieces. And according to the family, after then, no one else died of this disease in the Spalding family. You can still visit the Spalding family graves today. There's 6 graves lined up in a row. And I don't have any newspaper articles specifically speaking of that particular instance, but it was written about in the town's official history. Talks
Oh,
about
wow.
the vampire vine and afflicting the Spalding family in Vermont. Now, like I said, this went through multiple places in New England. So I did find there's multiple headlines that you can read, but I found 2 talking about Rhode Island and dealing with their vampire issues. But the
Whoa.
Spalding family and the vampire vine definitely stands out. Even among the weirdness of a vampire epidemic in New England, there's even one that's a little bit weirder than that.
What year was this again?
They started passing away in 1782.
Okay. So most likely the town is pretty small, in that time frame. And of course, if somebody passes away, it's tragic and it's not like super uncommon at that time. But then when it keeps happening, I guess the vine really added to that mystery, right? Um,
Yes.
is this the same time where they were building cages around graves to keep the dead from rising up?
I believe that was a little bit later. If I remember
Okay.
correctly, I could be wrong. If I remember
Okay.
correctly, that was more 1800s. That when Josiah, the last child, well, child, he was 27, but the last member of the Spalding family who died, who had his organs removed and burned, he died in December of 1798. So in that time frame is when all of these members of the Spalding family were dying and seeing that vine go from coffin to coffin to coffin.
Yeah, it's so tragic too, right? Because they didn't have the information, they didn't know, and all they have is their faith and superstition to go on. And wherever they came
Mhm.
from, um, perhaps vampires was a real thing to them. So if they were from Romania or somewhere over in that part of the country where it was, a real threat to them as far as their culture went, and they bring it here into the U.S. And then it starts all over again. And it's interesting to me when we think about it because throughout history we notice that different cultures will connect to different phenomenon based on what their culture is, right? Like from where they are. So maybe if it was from a different part of the country, or a different part of the world, it wouldn't have been vampires. It would have been I don't know, fairies or something, right, causing the havoc. Or if they came from somewhere else in the Middle East, maybe the jinn would have been blamed for it, right? And
Mhm.
everything would have had a different kind of context, but still blame it on the paranormal.
I
Um,
mean, you
are
see that throughout time. You see
Yeah,
the witch trials. You see these the New England vampire epidemics. Um, in Europe, there were multiple epidemics of different creatures and monsters that today we look at and we're like, that's insane. But to these people and the people in New England with vampire epidemics, this was deadly serious to them. This was no joke. This is something to be taken extremely seriously because what turned out to really be a disease, they saw as the undead coming into their town and wiping out their entire community and their entire family and their entire livelihood. So this is why they came up with these procedures of removing organs and burning them and these very extreme methods to make sure that the vampire didn't come and get them.
Yeah. I I have to also wonder, like, we have to think about the deaths that happened, but imagine during that time of the panic, like, what was going on in their small village or their small town? Was there a curfew imposed? Were people pointing fingers like in other places when people were being accused of being supernatural? Were neighbors being hunted and were they being like sought after as like possible undead? Those are the things I think about because I know how things are now, and you could
Yeah.
be called many things and hunted down for it, right? So now back then when it's superstition and it's I'm just imagining that the US in that time and when the sun goes down, you have candlelight and that's all you get. So everything is infinitely more scary because it's so dark.
Yeah. I mean, the darkness was to be feared. You were in the wilderness. You only had what you could see in front of you to work on to protect you and your family and your community. Beyond the tree line, you didn't know what was out there.
All right, Sarah, let's do this. Let's test your vampire knowledge. And everybody
Oh no.
down in the comments, we're going to test your vampire knowledge as well.
Okay.
Okay. What do you hang around your neck to keep vampires away?
Are we talking edible or non-edible?
Mmm. Edible.
Are we talking garlic or are we talking crucifixes or a garlic crucifix?
Garlic crucifix. Now that's bringing it to another level. So I
Mm.
was definitely thinking about garlic,
Okay.
and non-edible crucifix. Okay. What do we drive through the heart of a vampire to kill it?
Steak. Wooden stakes.
Could Buffy the Vampire Slayer kill Edward from Twilight?
Oh, completely.
Mhm, mhm. Okay.
100%.
That's all the vampire knowledge I have.
Okay, cool.
It's not a big subject in my house, believe
Good
it
I
or
have.
believe it or not. It's not a thing we talk about all the way here. Um, Terry says not so Terry not so Taylor Swift says absolutely. Got a lot of Buffy fans here. I'm pretty excited for the reboot. Side note.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, there's a reboot coming. Sarah Michelle Gellar said herself.
Oh, I didn't know.
Um,
That's fun.
do silver bullets kill vampires?
No.
No. What do silver bullets kill?
Werewolves.
Everything, including werewolves.
Well, that is true, yes. That well, then you
You're
could also
welcome.
say a wooden stake would probably do a pretty good job at most things.
Yeah, but definitely you want to get next to a werewolf with a wooden stake. That's like oh, but if you throw it, they might chase
Oh,
it though.
then they might run away and bring I mean, they'll try to bring it back, but then you have enough time to, like, start running, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, with the vampires, I wonder if there's any other cases like did it like stem into more cases around, right? I know you said it kind of spread out, but did it go like do you think that it went throughout the US at that time?
It did. Yeah.
It
It
did.
absolutely
That's
did.
so strange.
New England had a lot of concentrations of it. There's a very, very famous case of vampirism called, Mercy Brown. I'm sure some people may have heard that story in Exeter, I believe it was Rhode Island, but there were cases throughout the country, but New England's gonna New England. They
I wonder
they
why
had a
were
very high concentration of it.
they didn't have Dunkin' Donuts yet, so they were just like we got to make up crazy vampire
See?
stories, cuz. That's a
See,
bad
exactly.
accent, but I'm sorry. But I'm going to do it anyway. All right. What else do you have for us in the hushed up history basket?
Well, we're talking about New England being New England, so the next one, we're gonna go to New England, and we're actually gonna go to Salem, Massachusetts, but not for the reason that most people would automatically think. We're not talking about the witch trials. We're talking
Mm-mm.
about this very famous photo. It was taken July 16th, 1952, of the flying saucers over Salem, Massachusetts.
No,
So July
I don't
16th,
believe it.
July 16th, 1952, Coast Guard photographer Shell Alpert was working in a photographic lab on Winter Island, looked out the window, claimed that he saw that cluster of lights, grabbed a camera, took a picture, and that was it. He claims that one other person working in the lab saw the lights at the same time, but this was the only photograph that was taken of it.
Would you mind bringing that a little closer to the camera? How cool is that? And that looks like a lot of what we see today. And what year was that taken?
1952 at 10
Wow,
o'clock in the
amazing.
morning.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it was investigated by the Coast Guard, the military, and Winter Island is has been a very active site for military forts and buildings and structures since the 1600s, and it went from the 1600s up until the 20th century. But it was investigated. First, people said that it was faked. Then it was said that it was the lights from cars reflecting off of the bay, and then it finally came to just officially being classified as unsolved or unknown.
I have an idea. We
Yeah?
don't know. It's it's Venus and swamp gases and such.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, so Salem, Massachusetts, you automatically think of the witches because yes, that did happen.
Obviously.
It was a huge deal. But there's I I'm a big fan of Salem, Massachusetts. I've studied Salem for a long, long time, and one of the things I always tell people is there is so much more to Salem history than the witch trials, and there's a whole lot more weird than the witch trials too. Here's a UFO sighting in 1952.
Yeah, that's I don't know all my UFO facts, but that's definitely during the rise of UFO
Mhm.
lore getting more and more out there, starting with Betty and Barney Hill, right? And their experience was up in the Northeast as well, I believe, or was it West Virginia? Somebody check me. I think Miss K, if you're still watching, she'll know where that happened. But it's interesting because people like scientists weren't always quick to come out and say like, "Oh, I think we saw some flying saucers or UFOs or whatever." So it makes them credible witnesses when they do that, especially back then, right? Because they have a lot of they have a reputation to uphold, especially then.
Yes.
Um, when it comes to UFOs, Sarah,
Yes.
and this could be a personal thing. Maybe I'm getting a little too spicy here, but do you believe in
Uh,
UFOs?
yes.
You do.
Yes.
Um, okay. Do you believe that aliens are piloting UFOs?
I believe that there is definitely something that is much more advanced than us out there. I do not believe for an instant that we are the top of creation. I definitely believe there are things out there that we are not aware of. I do think we are being observed to an extent, and yeah, yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, chat, what do you guys think? Do you believe in UFOs? And are there aliens visiting? So, here's the next part of that question.
Mhm.
Are the aliens from a different planet or are they interdimensional?
Oh, that's a good question. Because I mean,
Mm,
it was always the narrative was always they come from space. They're from
right.
space. They're from above. But now, more recently, you start seeing conversations about, well, no, now they're under the water. They're actually among us. The people wandering around that we don't ever know. And while those are kind of newer parts of the conversation, I don't think it's something that can be ruled out. I mean, how do you rule it out? We don't know about
We
it.
don't know. So
Yeah, anything is
here's a little piece
possible.
of lore for everybody watching, and I'm not a huge. I don't know why I keep saying I'm not a big UFO guy because I love the subject. I love it. I love it.
Mm,
I just don't have both feet in, because I like to be really like well rounded in my opinion. But there's always different facets of things to listen to. But here's what's interesting. Off the coast of California on Google Earth, you used to be able to see some really interesting shapes under the water right as the trench or the shelf dropped off the coast of California. And for a couple of years, people would be able to take photos of it using Google Earth and Google Maps and stuff. And very recently, for some reason, that image got blurred out. And they're wondering if too many people realize that this could, because in that same space, people that would be out on the water there continuously would talk about lights rising from the sky and coming out of that space. And then all of a sudden you can't see it anymore on the maps. So it makes me wonder, I- is there something there that they're hiding? Are there aliens among us in that space?
I mean, California has multiple like UFO sightings like early on. There was some in the late 1800s, early 1900s. It's something that's been documented and talked about in that part of the country.
Yeah. So over here on the East Coast, here in particular where I live, we've had quite a bit of an uptick in UFO and paranormal activity, as far as like aliens and stuff go. So, what have you experienced that? Because we don't live far from each other.
I have not. I
Okay.
know people and have known people that have claimed to have had some very intense experiences nearby. I
Yeah.
personally have not, but
So I'm going to tell you because this part isn't hushed up history, but it kind of is because the person who told me this story would never tell it publicly. So I'm just going to tell you that from a trusted law enforcement officer friend of mine, several years ago, we were both working an overnight shift, and he called me on the phone and he was like, "Dude, you got to come over here to this part of town because I'm seeing something that I can't explain." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna start driving over to you, but what like I don't know what he's talking about at this point. I think he's talking about police related stuff." He's like, "I'm gonna tell you as you're driving to me because I don't want to lose sight of it." And he's like, "It looks like there's three candles in the sky and they're dancing around." And I was like, "What do you mean like candles?" He's like, "You know, like the color of like an orange street lamp, but there's three of them and they seem to be really high, like above the trees, and they're just dancing around." And
hmm,
the space that he was in is a place that I know has a lot of phenomenon
a lot
otherwise
of
that
weird going
happens.
on there.
Yeah. But what was really crazy is as I got really close to his location, and I was only about 4 to 6 minutes away, when I got close to his location, he was like, "Are you almost here? Because it looks like they're like leaving. They're doing something." And I was like, "Okay." And as I got up to the car, they were just gone.
Did he
So
describe how they left?
they kind of became one and just blipped and were just
Okay.
gone.
'Cause this
Yeah.
guy with this UFO sighting in 1952, he described it as they were there, and then they just slowly faded and then gone.
Wow. That's so crazy. So the thing I have to say is obviously in the 50s they didn't have technology like drones like we have. And
Mhm.
the story that I'm telling happened probably about 2016. And it was well before most of us could afford a drone that we could just get at Best Buy and toss in the air and fly around. And this was also probably about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's one of those things where I'm sad I didn't get to witness it because I really wanted to see it.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm happy he got to see it, but I don't think he's a big believer. Huge X-Files fan, not a big UFO guy. So
Mm.
interesting. Chris
Hmm.
Mendez, Supernatural Untold Stories, has said he's seen that, and he has some really interesting stories. I'm not going to ruin them. He's from Puerto Rico, and he has some really crazy stories about UFOs and aliens. And he and I have talked about this, and it might be somebody you want to chat with about because he might be able to bring you to some more hushed up history outside of the continental US.
Yeah, we're gonna
Um,
have to chat, Chris.
yeah, he has some really good stories. Um, so I'm like thinking about some really good stuff when it comes to UFOs and aliens and stuff like that. It's really an interesting topic that we don't always lump in into the paranormal, right? Um, have you ever thought about well, to bring this back to the beginning of the conversation, how different cultures will associate different supernatural phenomenon with what's happening to them. So I believe in like spirits and ghosts, right? So maybe if my house had shadows darting through it, I might say like, "Hey, my house has shadow men in it and I believe that they are ghosts." But somebody else who's a big UFO person might say like, "My house has these little shadowy beings creeping around and I believe that they are aliens." Um how do you feel about that cross pollination of the paranormal?
How so? What do you mean?
So, like, how do how do how do you think we should differentiate? like between aliens, ghosts, demons, cryptids? Like, are they really one big entity, or are they actually separate ones that we're like, because of our point of view, we're giving them different names and attributes?
So I do think these are separate things under one big umbrella of unexplained, but we do have to keep in mind that it is an umbrella of unexplained. So we can have a lot of theories. We can have a lot of things where our view of them might be a little skewed based on what we either know more about, if we know more about ghosts, or even if we're more comfortable with that. I know I would be much more comfortable being like, "Oh, there's a ghost in my kitchen," instead of an alien. So that might be
Right.
where I would automatically go to. So I do think these are separate things. I do think these are like different little mini worlds of the unexplained under this wide umbrella. But I also will not rule out that there can't be some crossing between them. I think
Right.
that's entirely possible because, again, we don't know much about this. So we
Right.
can't sit here and say that's not possible. This is this, this is this. We don't know. And we are constantly, we're especially now where we have access to so much information and technology, we're learning more and more about this every day, and we're being shocked and surprised more and more every single day with
That's
this.
very true.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any other stories?
Yeah, I
You got
have one
anything
more.
more?
I do. Well, it's
Okay.
fun that you brought up fairies before
I
because
also
we
have a
have
good
a
fairy
story.
story. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know you do. So, I don't have a date on this, unfortunately, but it was a story that was printed in a Irish newspaper, stolen by the fairies. This woman named Annie McIntyre went to apply for a pension, and she said she didn't know how old she was, but she did want to tell the person at the office that she did know that she was stolen by the fairies when she was little on Halloween night in 1839. She proceeded to tell the office that it was her brother who saved her, that he was returning home and he saw her in the woods surrounded by fairies that were leading her into the trees, and that he threw a book at them. And then they fled, and they were able to go home, and she was able to live out the rest of her life peacefully. And they did grant her her pension.
Miss, we need you to go. Here is your pension. We don't want to hear any more fairy talk.
You got it.
And she was like, that's what I was looking for.
Got it. Annie McIntyre.
So, what do you think would have happened if she went off into the forest with the fairies?
I mean, I'm not super well versed in the Fae. I do know be nice to them. Very similar to the guy with the ghost. Be nice to them. Don't anger the Fae because
Yeah.
they can be a little vengeful, as you may have a little bit to tell about that.
Fairies do be fairying. So, uh, recently in the last 6 months or so, I went and investigated one of our friends' places, and it's called the Parlor. And it's got a bunch of really cool stuff. Big shout out to the Parlor in Keyport, New Jersey. Um, it has a bunch of really cool, eclectic stuff in it, including some haunted items. And one thing that they think is going on in this place is that there are fairies there. And I was like, "Well, I don't know that I believe in fairies." And they're like, "Well, you really shouldn't say that while we think we have fairies because something might happen." And I said, "Okay, fairies." And this is not a new challenge, by the way, if you were listening. I'm just telling a story. Um, okay, fairies, if you are real, you have my permission to come home with me and do something so I know that you're real. Now, I said it in jest. I did not expect the next
And
event to
when you
happen.
said it, Genevieve of that shop and I just kind of looked at each other like,
Yeah, it was
okay.
silly of me. So, the next day, literally the next day, my wife goes to get in her car that only had about, I don't know, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 miles on it. It's a brand new car. And she went to start it and it wouldn't start. And I was like, well, that's weird. I drove it last night to the Parlor and back, and it was fine. So I went outside and I pushed the start button and all of the lights came on, but the car didn't start. And I know a little thing about cars. So I open up the hood and I look and I'm like, it all looks fine. There's nothing here that is broken. Why is this not starting? So I have to put my man ego down and call the dealership and be like, car is dead. I don't know what's wrong with it. Can you come get it and fix it, please? So they sent somebody out. And the next day I get a call and the lady's like, hey, your car's fixed. Come on in and we'll tell you why it was broken. I said, okay. So I come in to um, the shop and the lady's like, look, I've worked here at Subaru for 15 years and I've seen 100,000 of these cars. I've never seen what happened happen to your car before. There's no bulletin on it. There's no notes. And I said, well, the suspense is killing me. What happened? And she said, well, the starter was unplugged underneath the car. And she asked me, did you go underneath the car and mess with it? And I said, no. I said, how likely is it that the plug would come out of a starter? And she's like 99.99% chance that would never ever happen because of the way that the motor and the wire are hooked up together. So when I was pushing the button to start the car, the wire that sends the signal to the starter motor to crank the motor wasn't getting the signal. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, last night I said something about fairies being mischievous and I didn't really believe in them. And she laughed and she's like, it's St. Patrick's Day. Maybe not the best day to be talking about the fairies and the fae and telling them what they can't do. So that was my experience. And I apologized to them. And I said, I believe in you. Please don't unplug any more vital parts of my motor vehicles because it could be expensive. Rick says 1% vibration. Yeah, perhaps. That's just what happened. Sayre Smith says, BS. Hey, that's probably what your breath smells like, buddy. If you don't like being here and you don't like the stories, you can kick rocks. Have a great day. There's no trolls allowed in here at Signal Network. We only want to have big open conversations, and we only welcome kindness and niceness, but also, be ready for anything. So, yeah, have you ever had any kind of like experiences like that with fairies or the fae?
That I have not. No. I've heard stories from people. I know people that are very, very much more well versed in them that, swear by it, just be nice. But I personally have not. I'm not well versed in them and I've never had any experiences with them.
It's probably better off that you didn't have any experiences with them because to me, they definitely are a force to be reckoned with. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
apparently.
Don wants to know, do we have any time travel stories? Do you have any?
I do. Uh,
Can you dig back
I
in your
I
hushed up
do.
history brain?
Yeah, no, I definitely have one. It was one that was published in a book series that I was featured in. It's a very long, complicated story though.
Okay.
So it's I mean,
All
in a
right.
nutshell, there were two women that were traveling in Europe in the 1800s, I believe, and they went to Versailles and they walked through one of the archways and they started to, all the classic time travel where everything all of a sudden was a little hazy and a little weird and things were different. And they started seeing people in French Revolutionary garb. And long story short, because this is a very long, complicated story, they do believe that they went into a bit of a time slip. If you look it up, it's called the Morbly Jourdain, I believe, were the two last names of the two women who experienced it. It's a wild, wild story. I can post it somewhere if somebody wanted to see it.
Yeah, we'd love maybe you could make it a part of the hushed up series and we can hear it from you.
There we go.
That's what we're here for. So I have an interesting one. It's third hand, but it's from somebody that we know. Our friend Kelly at the Stanley Hotel. She owns it and she's operated it for quite a while. And she has a family member that experienced a time slip in the hotel. So the family member was coming from the third floor down to the second floor of the hotel, down a flight of steps. And as she came down the flight of steps, she said things got very wavy and very
Mm.
hazy. And she was looking at the hotel, but it didn't look anything like how she expected it to look because it had changed so drastically on her way down the steps.
Well,
And when her when Kelly was talking to her family member and chatting with her about it while it was happening, she wasn't getting any good responses from this family member because she had her eyes on her the whole time. So while this person was having this experience of time travel, she was being watched by somebody who witnessed it that was not having the same experience. And when she came out of the trance, she told Kelly, "This is what I saw, and it was so much different than what it looks like right now." And apparently, she was pretty sapped for energy after that happened. So it makes me wonder if people who are having time slips and time travel experiences, if they're mentally being pushed into a different space but are still interacting with everybody here, or is there a whole like time where your physical being could be transported through time by accident?
Well, I mean, you hear about how people, when they interact with the paranormal, say how they're drained. And I mean, that's kind of a form of time travel.
Yeah, it seems to be very common. Terry says, "Do you have any Bigfoot stories?" I do.
Oh, you do? Go for
I
it.
do have one. Yeah, and it's very scary. So, a couple maybe last year, Ronnie LeBlanc from Expedition Bigfoot came out to the Shanley Hotel with Get Haunted crew. That's Rob and Get Haunted. Big shout out to those guys. Love them. Um, they came out. We had basically a real paranormal conference. We weren't there to shake hands with celebrities. We were there to really do some work and see what we could come up with. And part of it was we did an extraterrestrial bonfire circle where we try to get UFOs and aliens to visit us. We did some ghost hunting, of course. But the thing that stuck out most to me is we went looking for Bigfoot in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains or the Catskill Mountains where the Shanley Hotel is. And we had this really interesting thing happen. So Ronnie LeBlanc, he has a baseball bat. Basically, it's a small baseball bat, and it's used for knocking on trees. And apparently, Bigfoot, if they do exist out in the wilderness, and they communicate sometimes through howls, but also through banging on trees. So Bigfoot hunters or squatchers or whatever they want to be called, they do this to mimic the Bigfoot. And they bring the bat with them and they bang on the tree and they listen for distant bangs back. So I thought that this was really interesting. So we attempted it a couple times and we banged on the trees and we didn't hear anything back.
Hmm.
And by the way, this was like the middle of the day, is like July. It was in like this big, really big park that was nearby where they've allegedly seen some Bigfoot. So I said, you know what? Coming from the ghost hunting background, I said, why don't we get out a digital voice recorder and see if when we bang on the trees, we get any kind of banging coming back on the recorder. So Ronnie was like, well, I've never tried that. Let's good. What, can't hurt. Let's do it. So,
There's that cross
right,
that we were talking about
exactly.
before.
And
Yeah.
this is why we talk to each other. So
Ah,
I took out the voice recorder and he bangs on the tree really hard and we record it. And then after it's done, we play it back and we hear our knocks really loud because he's like 10 feet from me and they're really loud inside the recorder. And then at the end of it, about like 15 seconds later, you hear pop, pop, pop. And we didn't hear it the first time with our ears, but on the digital voice recorder, you could hear a similar knocking pattern seemingly coming from the distance. So something was banging back and we just couldn't hear it. But there's more.
oh, swatches.
What do you mean there's more? There's more. So I had exactly 3 recordings on that digital voice recorder. The first one was a dud attempt at what we did. The second one was the good attempt where we got something. And the third one was us talking and me trying to communicate with Bigfoot like an EVP, like a ghost. Recording 1 where we got nothing, and recording 3 where I tried to do EVP work with Bigfoot were on my recorder. The one where we got the knocking back, it disappeared.
Of course.
And I use this digital recorder
Yeah.
all the time. I know how to work it. I know how to operate it. I'm 100% sure I didn't accidentally delete it. I would have actually had to make an effort to do it. So we got back to the Shanley, and I
That
was going
is
to let
something
everybody hear the.
that's something that you hear people experience on paranormal investigations, though, are
Yes.
tracks disappearing. So you were experiencing having a very, you know, typical paranormal experience in a cryptid Bigfoot Sasquatch arena. So,
Yeah.
hmm.
Robert Heskey chimes in and he's our Afraid of Nothing podcaster. Big shout out. We love that podcast. he says, Afraid of Nothing this Sunday is all about Tesla and time travel.
Ooh.
So, fitting right into that, I can tell everybody I know Tesla was a huge, huge proponent of trying to figure out time travel. And some say that he did, and that the government stole his files after he passed away. So, we'll have to find out. What if we're going to have to ask this question? Where in time would you travel if you had a choice? If I gave you the keys to Doc Brown's DeLorean time machine, where are we going?
So this might not be smart. This might not be a smart decision on my end, but I would want to go back to early New England, early Massachusetts, because I have very, very deep genealogical roots there. And I want to see it. I want to see it with my own eyes. I would want to experience that. I would probably have to be very careful. Then, don't look at somebody the wrong way and don't point at somebody the wrong way. So maybe a little bit of a gamble on my part, but I would want to see all of these time frames that I have studied for so long and that I have investigated for so long. I want to see them for myself.
I think that would be a really fun place to go. I see Terry says that she would go to Rome and Tudor England. Seems like another dangerous place. You guys don't want to go dangerous places. Um, Don says 1,000 years into the future would be my choice. I'm curious to see what the future holds. Oh, I like. I future could be dangerous too if we remember the time machine, um, where I was born to look up all my relatives. So I like Rick's answer. I think that I would simply just go back to, let's say, 1975 and talk to my biological mom, and I'd be like, "What's up? It's nice to meet you. I'm old. You have me in a couple of years. What's with that? But also, please still have me because I do like existing." And maybe I would freak her out, and I'd never be here. Wouldn't it be creepy if I said that and I just disappeared and I just faded out? The old Back to the Future Marty McFly disappearing picture.
Right.
So yeah, I really love the idea of all this, and of course, there's Sarah. How many hushed up history tales would you say that you have at husheduphistory.com?
That I've put out on the website or that I have
Mhm.
waiting to be
The
unleashed.
ones that you have out already.
Oh, several hundred
Okay,
at least.
so for anybody who just loves really great stories, you like the way that Sarah narrates the stories to you, and you want more, but you're not willing to wait until next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time when we drop a new Hushed Up History. You want more right now. Go over to husheduphistory.com. First off, get her book because she has a book. She is a wonderful published author. And then you can also support her by reading her blog, and all the hard work that she's put in. And there are many stories that, and this is Sarah's words, she has written that are not published that she's going to bring to video for us here on Signal Network.
Sure am. And there's some doozies.
Yeah, so I really can't wait for that. I see somebody said, I don't, sometimes Deno, people say things in the comments, and I have to read them a couple times before I say them because I've been tricked into saying bad words. Like, you know that thing about the Sofa King? Yeah, you got to be careful. I've said things like that. So he says, Deno says, the stornophone was first used in cars one day. What is a stornophone? I have no idea. That's great. Yeah, Sarah has great vibes. So you can find Sarah under Hushed Up History on Facebook, on Instagram, and on TikTok, and of course, right here on the Signal Network. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add to tonight's conversation, my friend?
Just if you liked this, if everybody liked this type of thing where we're looking at these wacky little headlines that don't necessarily warrant a full blown story, but definitely deserve a little bit of a conversation, just like how I have thousands of hushed up history stories still to come, there are a lot of these wacky little headlines. So if this is something anybody else would like to see another time, Scott, and if you were down, I would love to do this again to talk about these little treasures buried in the newsprint.
Yeah, I think that we can definitely do that. So whether you're watching on hashtag Team Replay or you're watching live, let us know in the comments if you want us to do this again live. And if so, please do us this huge favor. There's 30 people watching. It would help tremendously if each one of you copied the link for this video, put it on your Facebook wall. sent it as a text message to a friend who likes creepy stories. And let's grow this channel and support our amazing creators. Not just Sarah, but we have so many more people here. Whether you like paranormal investigations, uh, podcasting, or stories just like this, there is something for everybody here. All right. With that, I think that it is time for us to say goodnight. I personally have to go fortify my home from mischief nighters, or devil nighters, or cabbage nighters, or whatever it is you might call it. Did you put up any home defense yet?
I didn't. No. You know
Okay.
what? Come on in.
He said, I ain't worried about it.
Eh,
Um, All right. So that's going to be it for us for now. Make sure you're tuning in here. We have Afraid of Nothing podcast dropping Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, that is about our buddy Tesla and time travel. So that's going to be really interesting. And that's Robert Heskey's Afraid of Nothing. And later on this month, we're going to be dropping Robert's documentary called Afraid of Nothing. So you're going to see Rob investigate and learn about the paranormal in real time. It's really great. And then, of course, we have Beyond the Badge Paranormal. They're dropping some new content this week, Monday at 7 p.m., I believe. And then Thursday, again, we have Sarah with her brand new episode of Hushed Up History. So believe me when I tell you, we have so many amazing people here. The schedule is getting packed up with amazing creators, and we love supporting everybody. So thanks for being here with us. Sarah, thank you again for spending your mischief night with me. And again, I have to go protect my house against all the toilet paper and eggs.
Okay,
All
go
right.
do that.
Good night, everybody, and thanks for being with us. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hang out with us some more. All right, everybody. I'll see you later. Good night.
Bye.